Okay, quick video for myself, Harvey Goldman. No cuts, no edits, no filters, and no hair. As you can see, happy Friday. I'm back at home after a half day at work. Yeah, really just want to have a quick video out there today about the rise of CCTV and the fact that I believe that Britain, well, I mean, it's documented that Britain is probably the most surveilled nation on the planet. And why? So I guess it all started back in the 1980s. So obviously there was the main CCTV rollout for the UK was in the 80s. It was primarily there for crime prevention. Places like supermarkets, shopping centres and local councils were basically using CCTV to detect things like theft and vandalism. Now obviously by the 90s that had been also further rolled out, more cameras, and it had been adopted wholesale by pretty much every police force. There was also a surveillance boom in London in the 90s and also the early 2000s. London has got more CCTV cameras than I think any other city worldwide. In fact, I think the stats that I've seen, the stats that I've read, by 2002, basically Britain had over 4.2 million CCTV cameras. And at that time, that would have meant probably one camera for every 14 or 15 people documented as resident in the UK, shall we say. Now, obviously, there was a big shift from cameras to data collection. That then became the next level of surveillance. So around the 2000s, probably up until about 2010, there was a rise of online data scrutiny. The UK government began tracking online activity more aggressively, especially things like anti-terror laws. And this was in no small part to the advent of 9/11 and also other such terrorist activities. Their investigative powers became, I guess, reinforced. There was an act in 2016 basically called the Snoopers Charter. This law forced internet providers to store browsing history for up to a year to make that accessible by authorities with or without a warrant. And then obviously there was things such as ANPR that became widespread across the UK in the 2000s up to about 2010. And it was reported, I believe, again around 2009, 2010, up to 34 million vehicle movements a day were tracked using ANPR across various cities in the UK. Now, obviously, coming up from 2020s onwards, we've got the advent of AI. So now we've got things like police using facial recognition, which is largely powered by AI software. There has been massive backlash over this, not only because it is a bit of an invasion of privacy, but also when they tested it, 80% of the results that came back were actually false positives, or in fact, just erroneous results. So basically, they identified the wrong person for a crime. I mean, the implications of that could be, you know, beyond measure in terms of ruining somebody's reputation, ruining their life. Now, obviously, banks, they also use financial tracking. The rise of cashless payment systems basically allow the banks and, by proxy, the government to monitor every single transaction. We've also got workplace surveillance. Obviously, companies, my company included, they use key loggers. They can do screen monitoring to make sure that you're not just sat there when you're meant to be working, you know, pulling your pud. And they track things like mouse movements on the computers. So this is all driven by sort of low rent, low powered AI to give them the analytics to basically track employees. Now, where does this leave us? Now, obviously, we know that Britain's got cameras on every corner. Even in supermarkets, you go into your local Asda, you go into your Morrisons, and they've now got an iPad at the checkout that basically watches you as you scan your shop. To me, I don't like that. I think that's a bit disingenuous. I think there's a darker motive behind it, and you don't need like a Joe Rogan tinfoil hat to work this one out. But I firmly believe that obviously they can match your card details with the card you've just paid with to the shop that you've just bought. Now let's just say, what in 5 years' time if that gets matched up to perhaps NHS records, and you may be a diabetic and you go and try and buy a packet of Polos and you get refused? Like, where does that end? So I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right that the supermarkets record people at the till. On the other hand, I think it's perfectly fine for the staff to walk around wearing the little cameras, because that's for their well-being, you know, and there are some nutters there. So there are kind of arguments for and arguments against. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know in the comments. Keen to find out what your stance on this is. Do you think it's fair that the UK is surveilled in this way? Do you think that it is purely to keep us safe, or is there perhaps another motive behind this? When you tot up a combination of supermarket surveillance, of road surveillance, tracking your movements from location to location on ANPR, street cameras and everything else, and also what you're spending, your bank accounts are monitored, it doesn't paint a very good picture. It paints quite an Orwellian picture. Now, obviously, we're all aware there's been a lot of hoo-ha about us becoming a digital ID and cashless society. The UK government's already discussed introducing, coming out with digital IDs, and also reducing the usage of cash. They were at one point thinking of coming out with a digital currency, a bit like Bitcoin, basically a digital pound. I don't know, honestly, if that's going to go ahead. I've not been able to find anything out about that very recently. But with the digital ID, with digital cash, it makes financial surveillance even easier. Is that something that we want? I mean, there is, of course, the old adage that if you've got nothing to hide, why would you care? I've got nothing to hide and I still care, because I think it's an invasion of privacy by people that I don't know or don't believe are going to use my data for the best ends. And that's the long and short of it from my end. Obviously in China, they've actually brought in some places, a social credit system. Now, there was an episode on Black Mirror about this. It's a wicked episode where a young female's got an invitation to a wedding and she's got a social credit score, something a bit like Facebook, but it scores your social interactions with people and your social standing, your class, if you like, with points from 1 to 5. And similarly, in a video that I did about the poverty premium, if you're below a 3, for example, you can't get access to good credit to get a mortgage or to rent a vehicle. And yeah, that episode follows her trials and tribulations, and it does go down a very dark path towards the end. Is that the way that this is going? China introduced their social credit system, and on giant billboards in one of the squares, and you can Google this as fact, they were displaying people, they're basically photo IDs of people that had defaulted on loans, or people that had, I think it was driving bans or something like that. It was something stupid, but they were plastering them up on a prominent town square for everybody to see, so that people know that this person has defaulted a payment on a loan and they can't be trusted, or, you know, that's their perception of it. It seems like it's gone too far. It seems like it's going in a direction that none of us want, and none of us should tolerate. Hello. It seems like it's going in a direction that none of us should tolerate. And where does it end? I mean, with AI policing, obviously police are using predictive AI to predict crime hotspots, but they're also demoing a system, and the councils have done this as well in certain counties. And this is really scary. They've used a system to try and predict what children might grow up to be criminals. I mean, that's mental. That's properly Minority Report. You're kind of pre-predicting, using sort of precognition to work out who may commit a crime. It seems too far. But look, I wax lyrical. I'm really interested to hear your take on this. What do you think? Is it too much? Are we just being kept safe, or are we being surveilled for a darker purpose? I know what I think. YouTube's going to put a video up here somewhere. Maybe have a look. Like, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, all that jazz. And yeah, another video tomorrow. Goldman, peace out.